John Allen is back with me. Also with us, Michael Hardaway, a former communications director for the current House Minority Leader, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Mark McKinnon served as an advisor to both George W. Bush and John McCain. He's the creator of The Circus. Okay, John, only one Republican senator is running in a state won by Vice President Kamala Harris. Two Democrats are up for re-election in states won by Trump. So break down the key Senate races for us.
Yeah, I think we may have a graphic here, Chris, to show folks. But the Republican running in a state that Kamala Harris won is Senator Susan Collins of Maine. I like to think of her as sort of a Charlie Brown candidate. And by that, I mean, if the football is the Senate seat that she holds in Maine, Democrats are Charlie Brown, thinking about kicking that field goal with that ball. And Susan Collins and the Republicans are Lucy picking it up at the last moment and letting the Democrats fall. There's been no indication that she's in actual trouble at all. You've got John Ossoff in Georgia, who was elected, in a runoff in January 2021 at a time when Donald Trump was telling Republicans not to vote. We've seen Georgia move in the Republican direction. On the other hand, midterm elections tend to cut against the president's party, so possibility that Democrats hold that seat. I'm sorry. And then in Michigan, you got Gary Peters, obviously a movement toward Trump in Michigan this last election. And again, that sort of natural movement of voters against the president's party usually happens. So, both Michigan and Georgia, I think, will be interesting races to see. And Democrats have to come up with an economic message if they hope to hold on to those seats, and certainly if they hope to have incursions into Republican territory.
Excellent point he makes, Michael. There's the people, right? And there's the message. Take us behind the scenes. What's happening right now among Democrats as they try to get candidates and their message in place and also maybe raise a little money?
Yeah, I think our party as a whole is looking for candidates who have more working class experience and more community level experience that can translate at a national level. The reality is that we have a record to run on in terms of 50 million people with health care because of Obamacare, in terms of unemployment rate being cut in half under Joe Biden and all these other things. But I think we don't always have the best messages. And I think the way we tell those stories isn't always good. We have to be in the business of demonstrating instead of communicating what we tell people they should have. And so, for instance, instead of saying, we gave you tax relief, we should be sending people checks. And those checks should say from Joe Biden. We have to be more in the business of that, of demonstrating our value, instead of telling people after the fact what we think we've done for them.
Well, that was really what got Donald Trump reelected in many ways, didn't it, Mark? And also, let's not forget the fact that he seemed to have quite a disadvantage in fundraising. I wonder, as we look forward, is it harder to get donations after the kind of November that Democrats just had?
No, I think that people actually see this as pretty cyclical, which it is. If you want to be unpopular in politics today, just get elected and hang on to your seat because it will likely be in jeopardy next time up. In all the years of my campaigning, I learned a lot more from losing campaigns than winning campaigns. Winning is fun, but losing is soul crushing. And when you experience it, you don't want to do it again. And Democrats now are in the desert, and you get better at finding water when you're out in the desert. And but the thing that I've also learned is that parties don't lead people, people lead parties. So the Democrats also need not just a 100-point plan. They need somebody. They need a Moses to lead them out of the desert. And that's what's part of what we'll see in the next 4 years and through the primary processes. Who understands what's happening in America right now, because it's pretty clear from this last election that things are a lot different than they used to be.
Michael, in the recent Senate elections, in key races, Republicans were favored to win. The party nominated extreme candidates who went on to lose in the general, right? Do you think that there are going to be similar issues with candidate quality again in 2026, particularly if MAGA candidates do feel emboldened after Trump's win?
I do. But again, to the point you made earlier, the real issue for us as Democrats is many of those seats that are up are in deeply red states. And so I don't know that those things are gettable. I do, for instance, look at North Carolina, though, and say that is a seat that Democrats can win in 2026. But I think whether the person is a MAGA candidate or whether they're reasonable, I think our biggest challenge for 26 and trying to take back the Senate is the fact that those are in deeply red states that will be incredibly difficult to win.
Mark, history suggests Republicans will be on defense, right? The party of the sitting president has lost House seats in, I think, 18 of the 20 midterms since World War II. How much of what happens, though, on the congressional side do you think will be driven by what Donald Trump does or does not do?
Well, a lot of it, and that's why Trump is being advised, and I think understands that whatever he wants to get done, he needs to do in the first 100 days or at the latest the first year, because the second year, I mean, people, really smart people in the Republican Party like Karl Rove thought Democrats would get Congress, and they didn't. But they're almost certainly going to have Congress, a majority in Congress next time, which will thwart the Trump agenda. So I think that's just real politics and looking at it realistically. And it doesn't really matter what Trump does. I think given the challenges that he faces, it's only going to make it harder. But even if he's pretty successful, the reality is that the pendulum's going to swing in 2 years.
All right, John, that brings me to President Biden. 25 days left in office. The New York Times reports he's been hoping to go out on a high note, give something to the Democrats, right? Obviously, he's got a very complicated situation in the Middle East. They've been trying to sound hopeful about a peace deal. Who knows what will happen there? It wasn't necessarily tremendously popular, the fact that he pardoned some folks who were on death row. But I wonder what you're hearing about his goals, about his state of mind, and whether or not, frankly, whatever Joe Biden does in the coming several weeks will make a difference potentially.
Well, there's certainly things he could do that make a difference. For instance, the pardons that he's looking at and pardons he's already given can't really be revoked, whereas most of the other things he would try to do, probably have an ability to be revoked. Be interesting to see if he tries to issue blanket pardons for particular types of crime, particular sets of people here over the end. I mean, that's sort of a permanent thing he can do. Things he does by executive order can be rolled back by the president, by the new president when Trump takes office. So I'd be watching the pardon power in particular, but also, much as Joe Biden wants to have a full presidency and make use of all of his time, what we've seen in the last, month or so is that President-elect Trump is more of a factor, more of a figure and right now than the actual sitting president.
Michael, we only have a short time left, but I wonder if you think that there's something that the Democrats you're talking to think they hope Joe Biden might accomplish or might do, or if that's not even part of the conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, listen, I think pardons, he should go deep on those. Obviously, the criminal justice system is broken. He knows that. He's already done a lot there with clemency and pardons, but he should do more. To John's point, those can't really be undone. And so that is the one way that he can really calcify his legacy on the way out.
John Allen, Michael Hardaway, Mark McKinnon, great to have you all here today. Thank you so much. Happy holidays.